Hi guys, today with me is William Pyle. He's a meditation researcher, YouTube creator, and consciousness explorer dedicated to bridging the gap between science and spirit. Through Project Pyle Advanced Research, he studied the teachings of Itzhak Bentov, Monroe, Tom Campbell, and other pioneers who explored the deeper mechanics of consciousness. His work blends meditation, physics, and practical self-awareness to help his readers and viewers experience higher coherence between mind, body, and energy. As the creator of Itzhak Bentov Meditation Method, he translates complex ideas about frequency, vibration, and the heart-brain connection into clear, approachable practices for modern life. Welcome, Will. How are you
Thank you.
today?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It's great, great. The way it came to this podcast, I did an article on Itzhak Bento, and then I found your YouTube and contact you, and really looking forward to this conversation. Just give me a second. So, Will. Where do you want to start today? We have a lot of topics, but tell me, how did you come to idea to start your YouTube channel and actually explore consciousness? Because you
You know
have,
what? It actually probably started much like I think a lot of other people's,
yeah.
just the desire to explore the consciousness, to understand really what's going on for themselves. You can read a lot of these books, but unless you feel it or or unless you believe it, there's not a lot happening there. And
Mhm.
so I guess doing my research, I kind of found something that resonated with me. And then I've been doing various scientists, and really, I think it was with Itzhak Bentov. That's how I saw. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correctly. We just call him Ben.
Yeah.
That's what his wife and his daughter and that kind of call, because Ben just that just resonates more with me as just a. But no, when I found him and I did a deep dive on him, I read all of his works, and when I do something, I like to do it really thoroughly and stuff. And
Mhm.
I found that a lot of things that he was talking about back in the day, like back in the 70s, eventually became proven true through regular science later. And that really kind of resonated with me. I found out he actually predicted a lot of things. And he wasn't a clairvoyant. He wasn't trying to predict the future. He was just telling us how it is. He's got a nickname around the science community as the plumber. And there's a
Mhm.
reason for that. He can go in there and can explain what's going on. He knew what was happening, even if we didn't. And many times he tried to explain that. He created a couple great books. I would advise people go read one of his biggest pieces is Stalking the Wild Pendulum. And that's where a lot of my work comes from with my meditations, with the books that I've got out, that kind of stuff, was through Stalking the Wild Pendulum, a few lectures. We didn't get a lot of information from him that we have today, but what we got from him was pure gold. I mean, some of the things they talked about, oscillation, vibration, we still use today. There's a lot of things that we use in science that really resonated with me,
Mhm.
but it was when he actually took a step further and kind of left that normally really strict science community and dabbled into consciousness theory and talked about it with a very confidence, and it made me feel very, it made me want to do the meditation that he spoke of many times in his lectures and that kind of stuff. And I did a quick Google. I said, I want to do this meditation. I feel like he might have something here, but I couldn't find anything. There was not one person doing the Itzhak Bentov, what he talked about, as far as just focusing.
Mhm.
A lot of people were doing it, but it was called something else. Like a lot of people have been doing a meditation kind of similar to this. If you do some meditation research through
Mhm.
various meditations, people were doing something similar, but he had a very specific way of trying to harness the oscillations and the vibrations inside the human body. That's a real thing. It's a
Yeah.
real measurable thing. And he was able to kind of bridge that connection that I think a lot of us that we try to do, bridge consciousness, which is really hard to measure. It's really hard to quantify with math. I can't really explain it in a very good theory or theorem. But what I can do is, in a way, we can with kind of Bentov's way of oscillation, we can take measurements, neuro things that fire off, heart and brain coherence. We
Mhm.
can actually measure that now and find that there is a lot more going on there. And I think that's what really brought a lot of strict scientists back into doing a lot of consciousness research.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pause right there and kind of give you a chance
Yeah,
to.
no, 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 it's okay. You just, talk as much as you want. That's fine. Because what I want to do right now is like, because he was one of when I was doing the article, I realized he was like able to have this science approach because he was scientist and he was inventor, but at the same time he was like doing meditation, so he was able to combine both of the worlds. So basically I read somewhere he was like, okay, he was doing his invention, went to meditate, stopped meditating, went back right to apply the things he learned in
Mhm.
meditation. But what I would like to do now is that maybe for people that don't know him, could you just give a, short, medium, long, uh, quick introduction of him, because he has several patents, and he was serious scientist or inventor, let's call it like that.
I couldn't do him enough justice, but I'll tell
Yeah,
you just a little bit what I
yeah,
what I really am
yeah.
impressed the most about him. He was a
Okay,
Czechoslovakian-born Israeli American.
yeah.
He spent most of his life inventing things that we would still use now later on. At the time, he was a little bit out there, is what people would say. Just anybody talking about consciousness theory. But the one thing that I think is the most important is his work and his beliefs, especially around oscillation and meditation,
Hmm.
were used by our government here in America, the CIA, back in the 80s, to do real studies. They used the
Hmm.
best of the best back then, and they took Bentov's work, and in fact, they referenced him. Hey, we're going to use this because this is really good. And that
Hmm.
was specifically, it revolved a little bit about his meditation too, which
Okay.
just allured me more to go into it.
Ki-
But back, just to get back into Bentov a
Yeah,
little bit,
yeah, yeah.
when he actually in his younger youth, he got kind of he did some work for the Israeli government building rockets back in the day. He was trying to help out a community where it was literally 1 against 100, and one of the ideas was,
Hmm.
well, if we can arm them with some sort of rocket, and he was actually engineered one of the first rockets for them back in the day. And really, that, I mean, that was one thing that I remember. I think it was his daughter that wrote a really good book about him, his biography, because there just wasn't a lot out there. If you tried Googling his past or doing any of that kind of stuff, it was really hard to come up with. But through her book, it gave me a lot more about where he came from. But he moved around. He eventually came to America, was teaching. That's when he created a couple patents for the heart catheter. It's actually a mobile one where you can
Hmm.
actually, and we still use, we not only use that, but it ended up being what everybody used, and since then it's been modified to today's technology.
Hmm.
But he did that on a whim. He just out of, oh, this, I can do this in a very short amount of time. It just clicked in his brain, and that's kind of the same thing that happened with consciousness research. He was able to just make that connection. Some people can do that. Some people can see something, a very complicated problem that we all
Hmm.
can't just inherently see, and just like, oh yeah, this is what's going on. And if you watch his lecture from back in 1970 something, it's on YouTube, he's talking to the host, and when he's talking to him, he's laughing, he's smiling, but he's explaining it very simply so everybody can understand. But the confidence, the heart, the warmth, the positivity around it, a lot of that confidence, because like I said, I think he had it down. I think he knew, he didn't obviously know everything, but what he did know, he knew he was definitely ahead of his time. And
Yeah, I saw that interview, and then his wife. It's like an hour and a half. First is a part of the interview, and then his wife explains the work actually more in details. And I think he was really smart because he really knew how to explain things. And but I had the same feeling. He knew so much more than maybe he was able to share in his time. It was really
So
amazing. Yeah.
all I wanted to say about that, that is a great clip, and
Mm.
if you can see that, I'm also a big fan of diagrams. I
Yeah.
love it when they can draw things because I'm a visual person. I can
Yeah.
understand it. Sometimes it's really hard for really smart, intelligent scientists to be able to explain things like to someone like me. It'll just
Mhm.
go way over my head. But when someone can talk and actually teach it too,
Mhm.
that's a whole nother level of enlightenment to be able to relate to somebody. I never got to meet him. I wasn't even alive when he was born. But to be able to bridge that gap in time, that he could still kind of teach me something
Mhm.
so profound in such a short amount of time, I think there's a lot of power there. And I think that,
Mhm.
but
Yeah. So you do
wait, oh,
meditation.
I do remember
Tell
what I
me.
wanted to tell you. I want to tell everybody about his passing.
Okay.
I do think it's he. So I'm going to tell you two things. One is about the gateway process with the government. His work. That gateway process was a CIA program that they initiated. I believe I'm going to say, and I could be completely wrong because I'm just going off of my head and don't have any notes here. But back in 1983, they decided to really take a deep dive. It was like Cold War times, and they wanted to find out if telekinesis was possible. They wanted to know if they can move information with minds. So both the government, top organizations, people from NASA, two people that really pop out as Tom Campbell and Dennis Minrick, who did work at the Monroe Institute, and Bob Monroe there with them built the facilities and stuff and used some of that to do these tests. They used Faraday shields to put two people in separate rooms with barriers, electromagnetic barriers, and tried using binaural beats, meditation. They tried everything under the book. They specifically referenced Bentov. Bentov's work was done back in the 70s. So Bentov might have been kind of talked about. Maybe they talked to him about it, maybe, but he had died. He died before this. He died back in, I want to say, 79,
Yeah.
in a plane crash at O'Hare Airport in Chicago. The plane was taking off and the engine detached. It killed everybody on board, including two that were on the ground. And they were able to be able to match a lot of people's bodies, but
Mhm.
they actually never found Bentov or his teeth or anything like that. But it was a horrible. It was also way back in the day when we didn't have DNA technology. A lot of things that we would do now, the processes to identify more, but
Mhm.
which kind of led more to the conspiracy theory that the government had something to do with it. But I did a video about this, and everything I found in my research, the government had everything they needed. And in fact, the gateway process, in the end, when they did release it, they just didn't have enough to go off of. They couldn't reproduce the effects to somebody. It's not something
Okay.
you can teach somebody. All right, I need to teach you telekinesis. That's
Mhm.
not how it works. Can somebody achieve something like this? Yes. And in fact, they do go into the document stating the government's official point is that the consciousness is not contained within the body. There's a few points in
Mhm.
that report that's actually very fascinating. One other thing about that whole process too is that that document went classified for over 20 years. We didn't get our hands on that until 2003. And then when we did get our hands on it, like page 25 was missing. Later, it was found in the Monroe archives. Like there was a lot of kind of weirdness behind that,
Mhm.
that on a subject that should not have been classified for that long a time.
Yeah.
And then when we got it, it was a very short 20 something pages on such a huge
Mhm.
project. There would have been multiple, in my opinion. But then again, that's all we have. And
Mhm.
possibly for good reason. Maybe they're still working on it. Maybe that's what's safe to release. I don't know.
Okay. Uh, uh, Thanks for this because this was something I really wanted to talk about. And So you do the meditation. So you took his work, and like you said, and can we maybe dive in maybe a little bit because you wrote a book, well, now several books now about it, about this meditation. And maybe can we go like you have in your book, I read it, and you have like 7 steps,
Yeah,
chapters about it, but can you maybe explain that a little bit? So
sure.
maybe
You know
with
what?
the chapter, maybe we just start with the body as a resonant
Yeah,
instrument.
yeah.
Huh?
So I'll give you the basic breakdown
Okay.
of Itzhak's basic meditation.
Mhm.
This is what everything I've been able to extrapolate from his work. And remember, and I've told you this, this is all we got out of the man because he died such an early age.
Mhm.
And he actually wasn't writing books on meditation. He was he was working on the consciousness, writing books specifically on that and the work, doing a lot of lectures, touring. He was also doing a million other things and being a family man too. I just want to add that
Yeah.
he was a great individual as well. So the basic Bentov meditation, just to break it down really easy, is I always say preparation is probably the first step. A lot of people, if you're not prepared for a good meditation, you're just not going to get those results or those gains that you're looking for. So when I did it the first time, I wasn't so prepared, but I felt something. So then I realized, okay, how do I get more out of this meditation? And I realized for me, and everybody's going to be a little bit different here, but I realized I have to get good sleep the night before. I have to get good sleep the night before, eat a little healthy, and then that next day, I usually start my day off with a meditation. I may wake up a little bit so I'm not too groggy or whatever, but then I'll go into the meditation before anything really hits me for the day. I take care of any responsibilities I have, but one is just the preparation. And then I'll find a quiet spot. Now, that's another difficult thing. I think that's another reason why people are not achieving. I'm not saying anything. I'm not seeing any gains. A lot of people can't good sleep and they can't find a good quiet place to have some good meditation. I think that's really hard for a lot of people just starting there. But I think by starting there, you're giving yourself a chance. You're giving your brain, your heart, because that's really what's important. When you go in to do the meditation in the morning, you want to be restful, but you don't want to be tired and sleepy because you stayed up super late at night and drank a bunch of coffee and caffeine. So I'm tired. I'm trying to relax. Your body wants to sleep. It doesn't want to do a meditation. And I think with like a lot of exercises, as you do this on a daily thing, it's like a workout. At first, this muscle is really weak, but after I do it for some time, now it's strong. When I go to bed at night, my body is okay with it because it knows what's about to happen. Because when I wake up in the morning, my body actually knows, okay, we're going into a meditation. And it's happy about this. And these meditations, like I said, they're more of a mindset for me. It really gets my mind clear and set for the day. So when I go out to approach the world, I can go out there with a positive, open heart and crush it. And I think that's a little bit of what Bentov, in the reflections later. But step one is preparation. Two, I go into it. So I have a little spot that I set up. I can sit on the floor. You can do it in a chair. I know a lot of people, they have a hard time getting up and getting down, especially in their age. You can do it from a chair. You do not need to be sitting on the ground. I sit on the ground when I do the meditation because Bentov would have kind of done that way. I'm trying to do it as close to the real thing as possible because I feel like the more I fine tune this equipment, the more the needle is going in the right direction. So step number two, once I get prepared, I sit in my chair, I just relax, start resting the heart, start resting the mind. The second is the breath work. In a lot of these meditations, people have their own way of doing a good breathing techniques. And whatever works for you is what I would say to use. But for people that are starting out, I would say I do a 4-second in, slight pause, and then a 6-second out. And when I extend my 6 seconds out, I really want to let it out because it's in those last 2 seconds that you're relaxing. It's like a big release of stress. That's literally if you put a cuff on your blood pressure, you'll literally see that's when it starts lowering.
Okay.
So when we start lowering the blood pressure, the stress levels, the heart's in a nice resting area, it's more willing to receive. We're trying to lower it into that kind of 7 hertz frequency. The mind starts slowing down as the breath work, and the heart starts slowing down. There's less blood pumping through the brain, and so step 2 is really getting your breath work in. 3 would be is when we start talking about heart and brain coherence, and the channel between. And I do bring up the Kundalini a little bit at that, but that's more advanced. I do have an advanced book for things that dive in there too. But really, I just focus on that coherence, that energy, that column, that power, that store. It's a positivity. I'm not wishing for anything. I'm not hoping for anything. It's an antenna. You're a beacon, is what Ben would say. This is the meditation. And it's just by doing this, like I said, it's not a prayer. So like I tell everybody, it's open. If you're a religious person, that's fine. You can do this meditation separate. It's not going to interfere. It's just about you and getting your body and your mind doing good for the day. Then you can approach things a little bit better, and in fact, people ask me, do you listen to binaural beats? Do you listen to anything when you do this? I try not to. I'm just really trying to reinforce positivity. I'm listening. I'm being a beacon. I don't need more noise. And I call it noise. Even good music or binaural beats or good sounds, maybe relaxing sounds, there's still noise in the antenna in my own way. Now, this isn't easy. These steps, like getting good sleep and practicing this is a workout. This is the Jedi workout to get that positivity. And I feel it though when I'm out there. I mean, you can kind of feel my positivity and my energy when I'm out there and I'm shopping and I'm doing good and I'm doing grocery shopping or whatever, and I look around and I see a lot of people, they don't have that energy and that positivity anymore. And I think a lot of it just getting good sleep, doing a daily meditation. Step 4, I'm just going to go back into this.
Yeah.
Hemi-sync, because you were asking about it. And hemi-sync, for a few people, it's just getting the right brain and the left brain to kind of connect together in a very simple way. And some people that's where binaural beats comes in. Some people are able to achieve hemi-sync through that. And that's really Bob Monroe's kind of baby that he built back in the day. And Joe Dispenza, he's a big name that uses some binaural beats. Tom Campbell uses binaural beats. There's a lot of people that have achieved that. Tom Campbell also uses something called imagination. And it's kind of a spin on what I do, because I think it's closer to what Bentov would have done. And what that is you're more of an antenna and a beacon. So you're sitting in a positive light. You're just heart-filled, you're happy, this is a gift. You have this chance, this opportunity to give your body a rest. Like I said, you're not thinking of anything, you're not wishing, not at this point, because that's the next step. Once you're that open beacon and that antenna, it's really where that last step kind of comes in. And well, the 5th step, there is a 6th step, but 5th step is where the veil kind of comes off. People talk about the 3rd eye opening. It's really when you enter, and this is after a long time of doing this you do kind of get that out of body experience. It's just a natural phenomenon that you would experience if you just did meditation, got good sleep. You would experience this anyways, some form of it. But by doing kind of the Bentov and fine tuning your meditation, whatever you have, by really working on it and listening to what works and what doesn't work, you can crank that dial in the right direction. I can tell, because when I don't have a good one, I reflect on it. I'll say, what did I do different? And I say, you know what? I didn't eat well. I had pizza the night before and I stayed up and I had, whatever it was that messed my meditation up. And then I try to go back to the drawing board. That's the direction of kind of the scientific bridging consciousness. How do I get there? How do I fine tune this with what works with the real world?
Yeah, that's what you just said in the end. That was one of my question, the tuning, right? Um, so how long does it take? I mean, how long do you meditate, like
So
time-wise? It's like
So
30 minutes, 1 hour. What is it?
no, way less than that. When you're
Okay.
starting out, it'd be like a 10 to 15. And
Okay.
then what I'm doing is maybe a 25 at most now. And the
Okay.
reason for that is when I started, I realized just sitting on the ground in Indian position for 10 to 15
Mhm.
minutes, my legs might start hurting. And also, that's really difficult for a lot of people to align your back and sit comfortable. So at first, you have to find that middle ground between some alignment but over time, it's just like a workout. These are just muscles. And eventually I can sit through my whole 2025 comfortable, aligned with comfortable. And so, like I said, it's a refinement to get there. It takes some work, but I would not be still doing this meditation today if I did not see good gains.
Yeah.
From someone like me who has kind of a computer science background, that meditation wasn't a part of my life ever, and then trying some different ones and finding out what resonates for me, and then finding something that really worked. Like I said, and it's not my work. That's why I
Yeah.
put his name all over it. This is Bentov's, and
Yeah.
this is what the government used back in the gateway process. His specific oscillation kind of meditations. They don't reference it exactly, but if you Google it, it'll say, yeah, that was Bentov's work with that. They
Mhm.
use Monroe's this and like I said, it was a great document. They still use his work today. And in fact, that's kind of how you found me and how a lot of people, because when you want to talk about some of the best top tier, like real scientists, engineers that had a strong scientist background and understood the science world and could bridge that with words or understanding or diagrams, that's what really resonates and kind of connects with me. So
Mhm. Yeah, there was like a little internet interruption between when you're talking, but it's fine. Let's go to the 7 hertz connection.
okay.
Just before we go, you mentioned in the book that he was doing morning when he woke up. He did stillness. I wanna just so you remember that we're gonna get to that too. But he did it in the morning. He did it in the middle of the day and in the evening. So he says that it's all about consistency and it's being always every day in that connection that you get through the meditation. And that was one of the his methods to stay at every day or as much as possible. So maybe you can just jump to that one before, and then
Yes.
we go to 7
Yes.
hertz
So
connection.
so when I was trying to do these meditations and was trying to do this for YouTube
Mhm.
and stuff like that, it's really hard. I really wanted people just to try it. And so I turned it into like an easy 5-step meditation. But the reality is that Bentov, like you said, did this 3 times a day, and it was different kind of meditations each day. So when I put the kind of easy method together, I kind of took some of the best pieces that really gave me the most gains in my life. The moment of stillness in the morning, to have that moment of quietness before the storm, what we would refer as mindfulness meditation, which is, if you Google that, it's just gone up because people are seeing the results of it physically. They see that mindfulness helps lower blood pressure throughout the day by taking these times out of the day just to escape your mind, remind yourself of stillness and really the oscillations that are happening, your heart frequencies, your minds. When we talk about 7 hertz, there's quite a few connections in there. 7 hertz is a frequency, if a lot of people are not so familiar with, we can't hear that low. It is a sound, but we can't hear it that low. But what our brains are really good at is, if I gave you a 207 hertz and a 407 or a 400 hertz, or a 200 hertz, your ear would pick up on that difference. But in meditation, what we're talking about, and that's how binaural beats and things like that kind of get into your meditation, because what it's doing is it's tricking your theta state. It's tricking you into your brain going into a lower theta state, kind
Mhm.
of artificially, I'm going to call it, because we're using an external force. And so in Bentov's work, you didn't need that. This was a super clean, you didn't need that. If you did the meditation like the Jedi and you did it on consistency, this would be something you would just pick up. It would be a gift in your back pocket. You would not need that. And it was important to him because he traveled a lot. He was on planes, he did on, he was going places, and he wanted to be able to do his meditation kind of wherever he needed to, without sound, without anything. And it was really being able to reflect on the inside and the sounds. 7 hertz is kind of the frequency the brain roughly achieves when we hit theta state. That's our meditation. That's kind of our subconscious state. 7 hertz is kind of the frequency of the heart when it gets down to that lower meditation state. And 7 hertz frequency is what we could refer to as kind of the heartbeat of the earth itself. There's a few other correlations that people like to make with 7 hertz, but those are the simple 3 that I like to bring to attention, just to keep this
Yeah, no,
short.
it's fine. We don't need to keep it short. It's okay because why I wanna.
Okay.
No. Don't. No need to keep it short. Just explain as much as you want.
I will tell you this too. I am not an expert in these fields. I'm an enthusiast.
Yeah, that's
This is
fine.
something that I really enjoy. So when it's something you enjoy and it's easy to kind of take in and remember, you
Yeah.
kind of end up having some stories to tell. You have some teachings, you have some things. But I always let people know this is not mine. This is just what I've read in books like Stalking the Wild Pendulum,
Yeah.
Bentov. Tom Monroe's My Big Toe would be another great book to read. That's theory on everything. Tom
Hmm.
Campbell. I would tell people to look up Bob Monroe. These are early pioneers of conscious theory from way back in the day, but their books are still relevant. Tom Campbell was just recently on Star Talk on Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Hmm.
He's on all the big ones. Why? Because a lot of these scientists who were strict scientists, we're talking about just regular physics and things like that, are coming back into the consciousness science for a couple main reasons we talked about last time. Some of it has to do with quantum entanglement and quantum universes and the new theories that are coming out that kind of bring some things together that explain some of this. And it's in a nutshell, it's not that consciousness is possible or this is possible. It's that everything is possible, including, with kind of multiverse and just extrapolations and that kind of stuff. With new science, new technologies, new theories, where I would reference people is Dr. Krakauer's work at the Santa Fe Institute in New Mexico. I'm looking forward to his new book coming out. And a lot of this is a think tank where people who are really smart, that's all they do is that's not all they do, but they talk about consciousness research. They try to tackle some of the most complicated problems that we have. And there's a lot of places. Princeton has one, Yale has one. I am a fan of the one in New Mexico because I like their work. I like what they're doing out there. And I like a lot of the theories that has been coming out of there. It really coincides with some of my own beliefs.
Yeah, you told me that when we were, in previous talk that was in Santa Fe.
Yep. New
Yeah,
Mexico
New
is where
Mexico.
they have there's an institute out there. And
Okay.
I like these institutes. Why I like these more than colleges or other universities and things like that is that it's really a chance, just like me and you were talking, for a lot of scientists, smart people, math people, just to sit and talk, not be judged for, hey, what if I said, what is wrong with this? And throw big ideas out there and have some people talk about it from different angles.
Mm.
And we didn't have that before. We have a little bit with AI now. When you sit and you ask AI or you say, what is my theory about this? But AI is wrong. I want to let people and it says that on a lot of disclaimers that when you start talking about theory and you start getting really in depth, some of the things out of nowhere, calculations, things like that are just wrong. Wait a minute. 1+1 doesn't equal this. Where when you get to these think tanks where it's a lot of people talking, these communities is what I call them. And some of them are online. There's a lot of really good online ones as well that
Hmm.
talk about this stuff. You really have there's no room for error, because if somebody posts something and there's something wrong, you have a lot of people looking it over, that calculation, that theory, and they'll tell you what's wrong with it. Immediately, someone will come out and say, your calculation with this is incorrect because of this. Where when you talk to AI, there's no other person really confirming this until you show it to somebody else. And I almost promise you is if you show it to somebody, they're going to show you why a few of these things are wrong. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is AI makes assumptions. And in math and consciousness, there's no room for assumptions. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're not trying to assume certain things because of things. We are trying to get to a definitive answer, I guess.
Answers. Cool. We'll get back to that. I have some questions about the consciousness in general, but well, maybe we can just jump now. How you see from your experience, collective consciousness, personal consciousness?
So I first start off by telling you, I'm like, once again, I'm just a meditation research scientist in this, but what I found in all of the books that I've read,
that's why I'm asking. Look,
there is something there. Let me tell you, but you have to be willing to put in the work ahead of time. None of this power, none of this is free given. No. If that was the truth, everybody would just have it all the time and they would be selling it. There needs to be work put into this. And that's a little bit of researching, like we constantly do, finding out what works and what doesn't work. But there's a lot of real physical work, I think, that needs to be done to see gains. Like I really try to talk about getting good sleep, eating right, taking care of yourself. Because one of the things is, if you're sitting there doing a meditation and something happens with your heart, you feel arrhythmia, anxiety, maybe it's just a coffee you had, maybe you have the jitters, you're not going to get those good meditations. You know, there's some people that just can't sit quietly. So there's a lot of things that prevent people from achieving this type of thing. But I honestly believe over time, with true practice, that's really where a lot of that yogi work comes from. And I am not an expert. I know that you have experts on your show. They can go into much further, but they had it down. They had a lot of breath work down. You were talking about Chinese meditation, Japanese meditation. They had it down because that's all that they had back in the day, as something to do. They weren't on their phones. They weren't on the computer. They were out there meditating and perfecting it. There's a lot of cultures throughout the world that really, but back to your question about how I feel like once you put in that hard work of getting good sleep, practicing daily meditation, you do that for a long time. Somebody had made this a point, is that it's kind of like the keyway. You'll be able to start seeing through it, but you'll be able to open that a little bit more, just a little bit. And over time, it opens up a lot more. And I definitely feel that, because the reason I feel that is because things that I see things differently. It's not that they look different to me. It's not like they're magically look different. But I'll give you a good example. When somebody's angry at me, back in the day, you'd been like, oh, yell back at them. But now when you become a little bit more enlightened, a little bit more touched, and you feel a little bit more positive, you realize there's nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with this person. And how can I help them? What's going on with this person? It's how you see the world around you that will change. And that's the best example, but there's a lot of beautiful things that you may have not seen before that will start opening up. And I feel like collective consciousness is up on that higher level where everybody's kind of seeing this. Because when everybody kind of, Bentov put it best. I'm going to put this with a Bentov reference. On this level, we're all different. We're all sitting on the ground. This is, Will, this is, Jane, this is whoever. This is how we start off in this world. But as we all start becoming a little bit more enlightened, on the pyramid, we start overlapping in our consciousness. We start thinking the same things. We just do. In our vibration, in our brains, measurements, we start thinking the same. So now on this level, we're all the same here. But by the time you get up to the enlightened level, we are all the same. We are all connected in that consciousness. just through, I mean, he can explain it better, but that's the best chart that
No,
I
no,
reference. I think about that diagram, and he actually kind of explains it too. And I think that's a good way to explain it to the masses.
yeah. For me, I'm just the opposite of you. I'm not, like I don't have these technical abilities like you. I'm not like I don't have the same background as you. So when I watch these kind of diagrams and stuff, it's
Mm-hmm.
usually like, oh, whatever, right? For me, it's like it doesn't really.
Yeah.
But here was like, oh, it makes completely like I could understand, like I could connect with my knowledge and my experience from my life, everything that he was explaining, and I was like, yep, finally some put it in a diagram. Like even for me, that I don't have that background, was like, ah, that makes sense, right? So that it's really, I really recommended the whole 1 hour and a
His
half. It's
his
amazing.
wife did another really good one that I
Yeah,
sometimes reference,
yeah,
and it's kind of a pizza pan, and it's
yeah.
filled with water,
Mhm.
and I put a few stones in there, and then I drop a stone in there.
Mhm.
That vibration that stone makes, or if I move this stone like this, or if I move this stone like this, it creates these vibrations that bounce off of other people. Now, we should, in real life, that happens. We just can't see that vibrations in different levels, even. Like when a positive person enters the room, the little bit of positivity raises.
Yeah.
That's just on this kind of emotional conscious level. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But there's a bunch of different levels of vibration and in different areas that happens in. So in that way, we are all connected in the
Yeah.
consciousness. When what we do is a
Mhm.
reflection. In the end, though, a lot of what he talks about is what the holographic state or the holographic expansion. And
Mhm.
basically, it's a concept where in a hologram, all the information in that hologram is in each bit. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter if you had just me or a part of me, the whole universe is inside. And if I only had a bit of the universe, I would be inside of that.
Yeah.
Now, what blows a lot of people's mind is that's actually pretty real as far as quantum theory is going right now. Sure, that's definitely a possibility, because of, we've only been able to scratch the surface in the last few years. But if I took a bit of your blood out, I could find a lot of DNA, and I could tell a lot about who you are and what you are, where you came from, a lot of stuff. And this is just stuff we've discovered in the last 50 years. In 500 years, 5,000 years, you'll probably find that in that single drop of blood, you'll be able to find the rest of the universe, is kind of
Okay.
would be my early prediction.
Okay. So what's your opinion on multiverse? And like, do we, time and is it happening everything at the same time, past, future, present, and multiverse in sense of, you know, s-
So
how do you
in
see that? Because this is like I had a previous guest and she was like, "Oh, let's not go into that because we can have like just
so
2 hours about that." But
we
what do you think about that? What's your opinion?
I what I like to tell people and what I like to talk about is we just don't know enough about gravity. Like,
Okay.
gravity is what we believe, and this is only theory. This is Einstein. Gravity is the theory of the space-time curvature, right?
Yeah.
Gravitons and gravity, we still really don't know. We know so much about this side, chaos theory, numbers, things of so many realms, but something so close to us, something like I'm holding this cup and I can measure the gravity pulling it down. We just don't know. It's such a mysterious thing. But when we start playing around with gravity in calculations, what it shows us is that this fabric of space time, right? It's kind of a layer.
Hmm.
So our world is flying through the universe at 600 kilometers a second, right? It's kind of like a disc. But on the outside, it goes like this, the waves of the outside. And where those are dipping is a space time curvature. So
Okay.
we talk about a lot of things in science. We talk about what theories we can kind of say are true some theories, but the problem with those is we're making assumptions. So we nobody likes assumptions. No one's going to go write a book on, hey, I think this happened. But
Yeah.
like Einstein did, and later on when we saw the solar eclipse and we saw the waves of light that were bending, right then it made everything he said in the theory of relativity and like true. And
Okay.
everybody was already kind of playing with that, was wanting to know, is that, if this is true, this is going to be huge. And it wasn't until other science later on we were able to actually see and prove it later. And I think just like Bentov, coming up with some crazy good ideas. Hey, I think I might have something here. And then later on, 50 years later, 80 years later, yep, we measured it. We have a new science for it. We call it neuroscience. That's we're able to explain it. But back in the day, it was kind of some wild theories.
Yeah.
So when you talk about multiverse, I'm going to wrap this back around. Totally, I do believe that for a few reasons. We don't know about gravity. We don't know enough about dark matter, dark energy, really. But there's a few things out there when we just look at what we can see, and we can't look very far. We see a lot of things that we can't explain. You
Yeah.
know, if it was a perfect world, we wouldn't make those assumptions. But even if that theory wasn't correct, there would be something very, very similar to
Mhm.
it. And what I mean by that is multiverse. It could be time. It could be a doorway for some people. You know, there's a lot of people that have said that they can cross time, they can reverse time, they can go into the future. I would never assume to doubt them. You know, there's too many scientists that would say, I need the proof before I listen to you. And I think we need more scientists to listen, saying, well, what if that was true? If that was true, I can write a calculation like this. I can do math like this. And later, if we can find that to be proven true, that'll mean this is true. So it's through correlations and connections through various science. And I think open-hearted, open-minded towards a lot of the subjects that I
Mm.
think you cover with a lot of the people on your show, having that open mind that, listen, what they're talking about right now may seem wild,
Mm.
but in 50 years, if that becomes absolutely just regular science, I would not be surprised at all.
Yeah, I think the science and spirituality, or you have like Steiner and people that 50, 100 years ago were talking about experience, out of body experience, downloads or whatever, and now people are like science can show it actually that can happen. So just before we go back to the meditation, so how
Yeah.
do you see the gap now between science and maybe to spirituality? Like, is it closer? How much is it closer to maybe 50 years ago? What's
So we are much, much, much closer. Let me start
okay?
off by saying that because 50 years ago, we were not as open minded
Yeah.
and funding projects like this, like the Santa Fe, New Mexico. There are now many think tanks where people are doing this research. And 50 years ago, they weren't. They were doing research about this and that. Not much money and time and effort was put into consciousness research. So the
Hmm.
more that we can put into that, just like computers or science, we didn't start with the DVD player. We started way 100 years ago. So we're really just starting to really dive into this stuff.
Yeah.
And I do think, even though it doesn't seem like we've made big advancements because you don't see it on the cover of Time magazine or something like that, it's not the big advancements. It's the small increments over time is what most,
Mm.
like the car industry or things like that. It's not what we started off as. It's where you get over time. And automobile is the perfect example. If you look at an old car, the old 1905 car that was making all this noise and can barely run, and then you look at a brand new sports car today there's so much advancement that has happened between those years. And I think that's going to be the same true with
Yeah.
consciousness as more time and money. Now, the automotive industry gets funded heavily and gets the best researchers and engineers. And so it's more like the shifting of that We are getting some more money. We're not getting that type of money to do that, but we're getting better. We're getting people that, are doing this on their own, much like Einstein did. He was a Swiss patent clerk doing this in his off time. You've got a lot of people like us. This isn't my daily job or anything like
Yeah.
that, but we do the research and we try to share the knowledge. So as a community, it may not be me, it may not be you, but somebody in the community might take everything that we have and say, hey, I came up with something here. And that could be the thing. So as a community, as a collective consciousness, and that's the important thing. That is the collective consciousness. That's how we advance. And I think we're getting closer. And the problem in science, and Dr. Krakauer would say this, it's not that we don't have equations, it's that we have too many that would actually explain this. And our understanding is it needs to be much simpler. Because when you say, look, I can calculate this because of your heart, I'm going to use this advanced machine, we can do this, blah, blah, blah. There should be a much easier way to explain it. Just like I can explain I'm holding this cup in theories and in math. And the answer, I do believe the answers are there. Now it's peeling the onion. We're slowly getting to what we find as to be most. Now, is everybody going to believe it? No. And that's the thing, is that when you find something like this, that unless you can really prove it with some instrument, or you can get somebody, science is just not going to accept it.
Yeah.
In essence, the whole world is really going to have a hard time accepting it. Now, there can be believers in it, but unless, and I think now with more money going into this, they are going to be doing some equations, things that we can kind of cross-check. Now, I still think we're going to be hundreds years away, maybe thousands, but I do think I feel better about where we are now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you say. I think, it's for me, I'm sure we're gonna get to some point, like when you take, you're under hypnosis or you meditate and you have all of these experiences in that state. I just don't know what kind of instruments or, equations we need to,
You make
invent.
a good point.
You know, how can I explain mathematically or to a scientist that, like, look, I went into the future. I saw Earth point 2 under the hypnosis. It was happening this and that. I saw my past lives. You know,
you
it's
will be
like,
able to. You will
yeah,
be
I know,
able
of course we will be, but
So here's how we get there. And
okay,
it's kind of the evolution. I'm going to explain this. This is not my work. This is Dr. Krakauer, Brian's
okay.
work. But we have two types of tools in this world. We have complementary tools. Like if I gave you a pen, this complements your intelligence. You can
Hmm.
do a lot of things with a pen. And then we have competitive tools, and that's like AI. And we'll talk about that later. But I'm only going to talk about complementary tools. You can't, and I'm going to explain this very easily, you can't calculate the rotations of the planets without a Newtonian model or abacus, right? You can't do that without those two. And we invented those tools, but you couldn't do that before.
I
And
understand.
that's it. That's the
Yeah.
answer to your question. It took time, and it took somebody thousands of years ago
Yeah.
to create a tool, a small, simple tool. You can make an abacus out of wood and metal
Yeah.
right now. You can do a lot of things. You just need a tool, and it can be as simple as this. We didn't have anything until we had something like this.
Hmm.
We didn't have these tools are so important. Now, the problem with the competitive tools, they start replacing complementary tools. I suddenly don't need this pen anymore. So now I'm just talking and it's doing the writing for me. Some things make us stronger. They complement us. They make me a more advanced person when I'm holding this tool and I go
True.
into the wild, just like a lighter or a knife. If I go into the wild, I am but if I just have AI, It's a different thing. But that's to
It's,
answer your question. How am
I
I going to
understand.
prove this later? We are working on the tools. And that goes back to Monroe's work, back to the Monroe Institute, trying to measure when Bob had his out of body experience back in the 50s, I want to say. He was just coming out of the entertainment business and had millions. And he decided he didn't like that feeling. He didn't like feeling the out of body experience and not being able to explain it. So he built one of the Monroe Institute, one of the best facilities. It wasn't called that back then. It was just a lab. And he had Tom Campbell and Dennis Menrick come out and help build the equipment for it and that kind of stuff. They built tools from the ground up. These are NASA engineers. These are people that, and these were frequencies. These were sound. These were measurable things. These were the Faraday cages. There, we were building tools. Now that story, a lot of people talk about and they tell, but it's strange because it should be a lot of people should be doing this to, we would have more research, but once again, we don't have enough tools right now or the funding or people building it.
Yeah.
We do have some areas and people are doing that, and some people are finding some things. My own belief is it's going to be through real raw tools.
Yeah.
Real tools. I'm talking about something that it will change and define us, just like the calculator, or just like a lot of these things. They weren't really that important until we solved some of the biggest mysteries in the world, or we confirmed them. That's equally as important, because you can come up with all the crazy ideas you want, but until we can confirm them with math or a tool or something to measure it, or an equation, we're really good at that. So
Yeah, I agree what you said about AI. It's a great tool and makes a lot of things easier, but at the same time, it makes people, including me, in some ways, very lazy. And I know I'm using less of my brain when I'm doing stuff with AI.
there
It's
is there is a space for it. It is a tool. Don't get me wrong. And there's definitely,
a
it
good,
is a
I
way.
agree. Yeah,
It's
I agree.
for the biggest tool that the biggest reason that I think we use it is we are advancing extremely
Yeah.
quicker than
Mhm.
even on the individual level. If I wanted to know something tonight, I could do so much more research on that specific meditation, or somebody tells me about a yogi. I can do a lot of deep dive just with that source without having to go through a lot of other sources. It's getting really good. But if I want to create a new theory or I want to create a new tool, it only has the information that's been stored in there. So it
Sure.
has to be used with that mindset in mind.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree
that's what I got.
completely. All right, let's go back, jump to your to meditation.
Okay.
Chapter in your book is a chapter for the gateway of awareness. And gateway of awareness is called body and mind stabilize the gateway of awareness and tuning a radio. So could you to explain this tuning radio, to explain this transition from mental static to clear perception? This is one of the
So
questions. Yeah,
where I'm at with that in
yeah.
my meditation, and how as far as I fully understand it, when you do the resting state and you're doing the 7 hertz, you're in coherence, you're positive heart. Like I said, you're not asking anything, you're not wishing for anything. That is what they call the static, but
Okay.
it's not exactly static, because static really means absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And that's and some yogis and some advanced meditations can kind of get there, but really I feel like it needs to be more of a positive antenna thing. And like I said, I go from just this feeling of positiveness, like I said, with a pretty clear mindfulness meditation, that I'm not thinking about too much here. I'm thinking about positivity and love, because it gives my left brain and my right brain something to chew on and sync up and be quiet about. Because usually one side or the other wants to get loud. One side wants to say, hey, I want to be creative about this, or the logical side will say no. And that's the problem a little bit with imagination or some other these binarial beats. Maybe one side likes it, but if the other side doesn't like it, you're not going to get that hemi sync.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's really, that's where I'm at. So with positivity and love, for whatever reason, my brain just like, oh yeah, we both dig on that. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. And I am able to achieve that but at that point, this is where we do try to be that antenna, try to open up and be aware that there is that awareness. And that state that you're talking about is kind of a way later that could take people. I mean,
Yeah.
depending on how you progress in your meditation, I barely, I barely achieve things like that after doing it as long as I have, as far as the awareness of the universe. Because I usually go into a positiveness. I try to go into an understanding and I feel it. I'm kind of in space and I'm doing a reflection thing where I'm becoming one. My vibration is becoming one with the universe. And I just chill in that understanding. And the final step of the meditation is actually when you come back out of it, is just to chill for a second, just relax. I see too many people after they're done with the meditation, they hop up, I'm going back to work, I got to answer a phone. And the thing is, there's a reflection time. There's a time when you're done with the meditation. It gives the heart, because changes have happened. Actually, neurological changes in your brain, the pathways in your brain have made new neural networks, and you need to let those set in. You need to remember those, so those neural networks get remembered. So when you come back to do your meditation the next day, they're even stronger. So like I said, there's a tuning that happens here as you can feel what works, what isn't working. And it's just your body is going to naturally want that more. Because once you start getting to that level of just happiness, positivity, and you start your day and I can definitely feel just my life in general being a better life. I'm not negative. I'm not depressed. It's just a way of treating your body a little bit like a temple in a little bit of way. I tell people, this is not an overnight transformation. I tell people just start with good sleep. I'm not telling people to eat, do this, do that. Just try to get a meditation in. Because I feel like if they get a little bit of a taste of a little bit of that happiness, that warmth, that love, and like, hey, this is cool. I can do this,
Yeah,
So
I
go ahead.
think or you're doing this meditation, or you're doing some other type of, whatever it is. I think it's that the okay. Let me say like this. So a lot of there's a lot of programs outside, or is that meditation, or qigongs, or whatever. There's so many of these types of self-help or whatever approaches.
Yep.
Everybody is like, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to, eat like this, and it's like a million stuff in one book, right? And
Mm-hmm.
through my own experience, I realized, first you need to know about yourself. Like, let's say you do this meditation, and it's like everything else, it's repetition, you're getting better and better and so on. But at the same time, you need to know, like, I like fruits, or I like this. So you need to listen to yourself, right? What's
Very
working,
true.
what's working for you. And this is one of the tools to treat your body and mind as a temple. And it's like, and what I really like is, like, 15, 20 minutes. It's much more achievable for most of people than an hour and a half or 2 hours a day, because nobody, usually we don't even have 2 hours per day in real life to do that all, so, or we have a
there's a
family,
there's a
whatever.
very old teaching, and
Yeah,
it says don't give them the fire, just start the flame.
yeah,
And the thing is if I can just get them to start doing 5 minutes, 10
yeah,
minutes,
yeah,
if they feel something, they're going to keep doing it.
yeah,
If they don't, maybe it's not their time, they're not ready for that on their journey. I know I wasn't ready for this journey. I'm 47. I wasn't thinking about any of this stuff when I was in my 30s. I
yeah,
wasn't doing any consciousness research at all. And then once I found something that I was like, this is kind of cool, and I'm doing it out of a love for it. For me, there is never a day of repetition in that
yeah,
certain way. There's never a negative content attached to it, because every time I'm doing this, it's a betterment. It's
yeah.
a step up the mountain. So I never regret taking a step. And I never, because even on those days that I don't have a good meditation, like I was saying, I try to figure out why. Or if I'm having a funky day, what's going on? Now, there is some normality to people's lives. They're going to have great days, they're going to have low days. But what I'm realizing is by not getting good sleep, by not doing a decent meditation in the morning, I'm down here.
Yeah.
And you can try it. I tell people, try it yourself. Try it for yourself and tell me what you think. And everybody, including my, everybody that I have my little community on YouTube, they say, you know what, I'm feeling it. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm.
Some people it's easier to sustain, some people they can't. And there's a lot of reasons. Life may not be ready for you for this journey yet.
Yeah.
Enlightenment sure. Journey isn't ready for everybody. If you try to give me this journey in my 20s, I don't know if I would have been ready for it. I'd say, it's not, this is important to me. Yeah. But I can't, you come back around. They remember hearing something. I remember hearing something, and if, like I said, I try to get people started doing their own journeys. And like I said, if you have your own meditation, if you have your own breath work, if you have binaural beats, whatever works for you, if it's working for you, keep it. I never try to sell anybody anything that I don't think is going to actually change their lives. That's one of the main reasons I still do this, is that I don't know anybody who has done this and then I said, do this and then come back. You just won't. Once you get a little taste of it, it's kind of like Jedi power. It's the best way I can explain it, because you see things a little bit different. You feel better. Like I said, I'm 47 and I have the energy of an early 30-year-old easily. Yeah. And I wasn't like this. I smoked 30 years of my life. I drink, it doesn't mean that we're perfect, but as we live that life, you can kind of tell where, and when I live a better life, I'm eating a little bit better. I'm going for walks, just going for a walk in the evening. I realize how much happier that makes me. Yeah. And that's your gauge, that should be your life gauge. If it's working for you, follow it. If it's not working for you, get out of that,
True. Well said. Well said.
But I will say that the last thing I want to say about this, meditation, is you have to give it some time. If you're expecting immediate results, I tried your meditation and I didn't have an out-of-body experience. That's not going to happen. For a lot of people, for doing meditations, it could take a long time. Mm-hmm. A lot of people ask me, because we had this conversation before about, using pharmaceuticals or herbs, special chemicals, anything like that for that enlightenment. And this is just my own personal input on this. Yeah. You can get up that mountain. It'll teleport you to that mountain. But when you arrive at that mountain, I don't think you'd be mentally prepared and have the experience that I feel like if you climbed up the mountain, you get. The achievement and the goals. It's just like if I gave you something, or, if you earned it, you feel so much more about it than if I just gave you something. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of how life is that if life gave you everything, you'd be bored of it. You wouldn't learn anything. You would not be enlightened.
You wouldn't appreciate it at all.
No, like I said, I think that by starting there, but.
All right. No, good. Let's go to the Kundalini and vibrational current, and the spinal column and electromechanical current that Bento identified as a Kundalini. What can you share with us about this one?
So first off, I'm going to say that you are talking, and when I made that first book, I realized that it gets a little difficult. So I did make one for the beginners, and then I made one for the advanced.
But you know what, for me, just a second. For me, it's great because you have this science background and you can explain to me like I'm 5 years old. So that's why I like these kind of questions because I'm asking for myself, and hopefully other people that will watch it, that they're going to be like, oh, thanks for these questions or not. But I'm asking for myself. So because I know these things from, I read it, other books, I read it in different books, I experienced through different psychedelic, hypnosis, meditation. So I know about the feeling. You understand? I know how this feels, what you're talking about. But I never had that somebody explain me from technical point of view. So this is why.
Okay. So this is what I've got. I'm going to start it very kind of simple here. When we talk about the Kundalini, we're talking about a double helix structure that
Okay.
starts at the bottom of the pelvis and it goes up to kind of the crown of the head in the back. It's where a lot of people would refer to where the chakras get activated. There's a lot more going into it. And like I said, I'm more of just a meditation author and a researcher. So my knowledge on that one, you can go really depth with
I
old
know.
Sanskrit, old 1,000-year-old, there's some good stuff. Joe Dispenza had some good stuff on that too. But as far as me, it's a great spot to focus chi for a lot of people. It's a good area a lot of people need something or an area to focus on. And when you do focus that, it straightens up your back and you get more of this alignment of basically in a scientific, this is where the science comes in. When you straighten that back, it's like the highway. Think about
Mm,
going to your local city. That when if I made that highway all zigzag, it would take forever to get there and ever to get back. But as we straighten the back up, that's why it's important to have that good posture and stuff like that. When we do activate the alignment, the hemi-sync, there is brain and heart coherence happening. There's a highway going on there. And once again, it's about fine tuning. So it's one of those areas that we try to improve everything, each little area as a scientist. And I notice personally for myself, when I do the back enlightenment, I get a better communication right here. And it gives me, just like my car, I can dial up now it's going 195 miles an hour, boop. It's a way just to get a little bit more because you're trying to squeeze the juice out of this. This is a pure energy. You don't have to worry about. That's the other thing about doing it this way instead of maybe a drug way, is that with drugs, yours is definitely a way you can push it too far, and have a horrible experience. But with this fine tuning, you can push it as hard as you want because you're only going to get gains. You'll know there's nothing strenuous about this. You're not going to have suddenly a heart because you're relaxing. You're actually in a quiet state. You're in a very mindfulness state. And that's actually proven, if we took all your vitals right now and you did this every day, at the end of a month, we'd look at your vitals and see that, yep, this improved you mentally, physically, everything. And so we use those charts as a scientist to say, okay, so back to the Kundalini, it's an area to store the energy, brain coherence. Neuroscience says that it's a linkage, the better communication, because there are gaps in the communication. Sometimes when one fires off something down here, if there's something going on, they can kind of be blocked. What we want is that current. And I think, and I feel this is from my personal experience, I do feel like I get a solid meditation when that alignment is. And that's what makes it a little bit difficult, once again, is to being in an aligned back and comfortable and being
mm.
able to do that for 15 to 25 minutes. Here's where some of the hurdles come in to getting this meditation. Some people just can't. And there are other ways. I'm not saying this is the only way. You can still have a good meditation. But what I'm doing, obviously, I'm trying to squeeze the juice out of this orange to get everything. And then I try to report it. Hey, this is
Okay.
what I'm doing. So
Awesome. Oh, no,
I
no,
will
it's
be
awesome.
having I'll be doing my however many days or months review here soon. And it'll have everything of what I've experienced. And I love it. I love those ones too, where someone can explain something to me, even though they're way ahead of my level, and I can kind of relate, at least kind of get the general gist.
Mm,
Because sometimes a concept, and Dr. Krakauer is a perfect example of that. This is in his lectures; they're super complicated. He deals with complexity theory. That's
okay.
such a complex theory that they call it complexity theory. It's so advanced. But when he talks to people, I really like that. There's a few other people that I've had teachers in the past that did that. And I really admired that about the person. So I always try to remember that when I go to explain it to some people. And I realize if I start going down, if I get too deep, let me know. Because sometimes I get excited about the subject because it's nice to talk about smart things in a dumb world. Right
Ye-
now, the world can be very stupid sometimes. And it's nice when you have a community where you can share these ideas and thoughts and get some advancement.
Yeah, I mean, this is, for me personally, I'm doing this to have this kind of conversations. Because I don't have a problem saying I don't understand or I don't know. It's like because I can't, you don't know everything, I don't know everything, and it's like, it is what it is, right? And yeah, we're just talking and sharing experience and knowledge, and hopefully each of us will get a little closer to wherever we're going, right? So this is
It's
how
true.
it's how I see it. And okay, let's go to the third eye.
Okay.
Okay, so from science point of view or from technical point of view, however,
Yeah.
because I experienced third eye opening, and I know how it looks and how it feels. But let's say, like you explained to us now, the Kundalini and the spinal highway.
Okay.
How is with that?
So once I'm focusing my energy, and this is just from me and my own technical aspect, it's really once in, like I said, this is a super achievement. But when I'm in my head, thoughts come in and I kind of isolate those. But on the Kundalini, when I'm really focusing on my breath work. I'm really just trying to get that brain heart coherence,
Mhm.
trying to stay open, trying to stay positive. When I do that, I feel like when it's at its moment, we talk about it before. For me, anyways, there's a keyway. I can see through it. There's something on the other side. And what I mean by that is it's kind of a metaphor, but it's kind of realistic
No,
in
it's
many ways.
realistic. It's very
It
realistic.
is.
It's very
It
realistic.
is because you'll go from somewhere. It's kind of like this is the best. Here's how I can explain it. And everybody can relate. You're sitting in your chair and you grab your favorite book from the shelf, right?
Mhm.
When I go to sit down, I can feel the chair. I can feel how sore my butt is. I can feel how bad my back is. But when it's my favorite book and I start reading that book, I'm no longer in this chair. I'm in this book. And I can no longer even feel the chair.
Mhm.
And that's the best way I can explain it, how your
Mhm.
mind opens up and takes you into other worlds.
Yeah.
That is the one that we were given as a gift, and that's your imagination. When
Mhm.
you can imagine things or you're reading a book, it will take you somewhere. When you're
Oh yeah.
watching a movie, that is the gift that you're kind of inherently given, sort of. But I let you know that that is definitely not the only one. And there's other ways to activate that imagination. Like I
Yeah.
said, Tom Campbell uses that in his work. But for me, it's kind of that same concept. I'm here, I'm in this chair. Then when I'm thinking about the holographic reflection, or I'm thinking about the cosmos, I'm thinking about the whole universe, suddenly with my vibration and just like a book, I'm there.
Yeah.
I can't
For,
explain it. And I don't
it's
have much more than that because this, for me, I still feel like there's a lot more to go on. I'm an
yeah,
antenna.
of
I'm
course.
still in early stages. But when I get there, I try to be open hearted. I try to just, what's going on, try to be open to whatever I'm experiencing. Because I know for me, when I've had those other experiences where, in my youth, when I was experimenting, when I was suddenly at the mountain, sometimes it was fun. I was just having fun. It was like a ride. Then some of the times it was kind of scary. There was some things happening and I couldn't grasp my mind around it. I physically, mentally was not prepared for that trip up the mountain instantly. I wasn't the
Mhm.
same person when I got there. So it didn't, and a lot of people say they can harness it if that's where your power is. I know there's a lot of shaman that use that. There's a lot of things like that where they get those results. For me, this is me, just be a basic person that may not have those shamanistic abilities or build with anything inherent. I feel like this is a good starting place for a lot of people to get in at least close. Like I said, a 5-step, and it's not asking you to believe anything. You really don't even need to change these things like your diet, your sleep. I
No.
feel like if you just start the meditation, it definitely is kind of the flame that starts it. But
Well,
did it go
my
off topic?
no, 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 not at all. Because from my experience with third eye is like this, right? So for me, although I have experience with psychedelics and other, techniques,
Mm-hmm.
it happened with the Qigong, that is, Chinese version of meditation
Okay.
and body movement. And it just suddenly I was in a different world. I could see it. It just opened like this, and And for me, it was like on every, let's say, 10, 15 seconds, the world changed. And I was just observer.
Hmm.
And what I learned later is that they can see you too. And what happened to me was like these worlds, they were changing. And suddenly they were like, I don't know, like the best way to explain it, I was like, it was like they were like men, they were soldiers on white horses somewhere in the Middle East. I don't know how many centuries back with machetes and, proper. And then I'm just observing them from far, and they were just going really, really fast. They were riding really fast. And the last three ones, they saw me and they stopped and they got back to me. And they come, it's like, when you're looking through the hole in your door, seeing who's on the other side.
Hmm.
So they came that close, it looked like that. So they're looking at me, I'm looking at them, and suddenly they realized that I'm intruder, and they started like with machete, and then I opened my eyes and it was gone. And later through a guest, I realized like, oh, they can see you too, like, or I read it, I don't know. But this is my experience. So this is like you are actually there and they can see you too. So it's like really fascinating experience. So, and I choose it without, the same with the meditation. So this is my one. So
I've
and
actually, I love hearing these stories,
yeah.
and I always try to, I try to glean something from it. I try to like extrapolate because I love hearing these out of body experiences. I'm
Mm,
hoping that it might give some key. I try to go through the details and that kind of stuff to find my own awakening and my own enlightenment. And what I realize is that each person's journey is separate in many ways. And we were
different.
talking about, kind of that multiverse thing where what I experience, even if we experience the same thing, even if we were twins, you would have a different life than I would,
Yeah.
just because of, so when I hear these people, I can totally understand because the brain is, we still don't understand the brain. We don't understand
Oh,
consciousness. We don't understand the connections. I'm hoping that we will, and especially with tools that and I think Bentov, like I said, engineered consciousness researchers. I think that, I'd love for them to get more funded so we can measure these, explore more of these.
mhm,
We are creating more tools, better tools than we used to.
mhm.
Really advanced tools. Um,
We'll
you know,
get
one
there.
one that I like to, there's a few ways that we map the brain, the human brain, and we can kind of figure things out. But even when you map it, it doesn't give us anything to do with as the observer observing the consciousness theory, the answers behind that. And like I said, I definitely feel like we need to make more tools to kind of explain that. Too many people have the same thing, you know it's just too many people believe something's there and know something's there and feel something's there. They're just trying to get there in their own way.
Okay.
And what I like about that is we're all going up the mountain, right? We're all trying to find what is there. And some people's route might be different. But the good thing about communicating is that if somebody finds a quick way up the mountain, says, hey, I found something here that's helping, it's nice that when we can all kind of share it.
Mhm. Have you
Um,
have you ever, I just want to touch what you said, like a lot of people have same experience, but are you familiar with DMT experience?
yes, I've
Okay.
I've
So
never I've never
yeah,
had the personal pleasure of it,
okay,
but
okay.
I've watched many documentaries,
Yeah,
read
okay.
many books, and that one in particular seems to take you to a completely different world. Is
No,
my
but
is my explanation of it.
I took it several times and I had a breakthrough two or three times, right?
Yeah.
And before I did a lot of research, like you said, a lot of books, a lot of videos, and so on. And it's true. It's always the same. There's somebody there waiting for you to give you all the answers to your questions. For everybody is different, the way they appear or situation. but it's always somebody's there, and you can get any answers you want. And it's really, this is what I'm saying. A lot of people have same, so this is just one. But before you mentioned observer and observed, and this is the mirror state.
You're correct.
So, what you can tell us about because how the mind comes both observer and be observed, because how is that in your experience, or how
Well,
could
it's
you explain?
very actually, it's a very profound,
Yeah.
it's a very profound statement. And the reason for that is we shouldn't be able to if we didn't have that consciousness there. And that's been our biggest argument for it, is that a lot of times when you're a system, whether it's organic or say I'm a computer, you only have so much stored information, regardless if you're an organic or a stored person. And the thing is, and you act on those. I drink this water gives me this happens. It's cause and effect. It's a very reactive world. But to be able to look out of it, out of my body, I could literally imagine right now, and that's what, going back to one of the gifts that we were given, it's just one of the many gifts, how our brain and consciousness connect. That's the
Mhm.
quickest one that people can relate to, but it's not the only connection. And meditation is another way. DMT is another way. There's a lot of these ways that the brain can connect with consciousness, I believe, anyways,
Yeah, yeah,
because
of
a lot of
course.
these people do have these same experiences. Um,
You can reach DMT state with the breath work. It's DMT state is not just with psychedelics or drugs or whatever, but it's also you can achieve with the breath work techniques,
oh yes, and in fact,
and music and so on. It's there are
and
different types of how to get there.
there's another one that a buddy of mine, Max, had told me about that he was kind of experimenting with, is actually going into light deprivation, going
Yeah,
into meditation in a dark place, because it actually turn some of your natural stuff into kind of a DMT, and you
yeah.
will have that same natural experience, and that just comes from your body. So I 100% believe that you don't need kind of this psychedelics to achieve that. There's a couple different ways: breath work, light deprivation. You know what? Just being a serious yogi after these, some of those older yogis, I can tell you, because I can see them when I do. They can achieve that
Of course, yeah.
same state because you can measure their breath. You can measure their heart rate resting at whatever. They can do some things we just can't even start to explain quite yet. And it's through breath work, it's through meditation, it's through consciousness and focus.
Yeah.
But
So, are you familiar with Wim Hof?
no.
Okay, so he just check him out. He's European guy. So with his breath work, he went like I think I don't know in Himalaya. He went barefoot and in shorts, and he regulated his temperature. And it's all they measured everything in the university. So he was like here measure everything, and it's so also I think with his method you can get to DMT version. So it's there's a lot of different techniques together, right? And before, look, I have a question about one diagram that for me was really a big aha moment in my own research of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That it's in this documentary of Ben, and that's where he's explaining the consciousness and where we are.
Yeah.
And could we go there? Let's go there a little bit because the way he explains, I don't know if I can give. I can give this, this part of the video. I can put it in the podcast, I guess, and before you will explain. But let's go there because he explains where majority is now and where we're going to be in the next 100,000
So
years.
so yeah, so basically on his belief on that is that not everybody's going to make that enlightened state. And in fact,
No.
there's a lot of other religions that have that circle of life in a way that as you're living your life right now, and the majority of people are kind of like here, and there is people that are slowly kind of doing enlightening, and it is kind of an upper level, whereas some of these people are kind of doomed to repeat themselves in a way, not doomed to repeat themselves, but they get another chance to be enlightened in a spot where you're kind of becoming one with the universe
Hmm.
once you hit that level of enlightenment or
Hmm.
consciousness. When your consciousness and your enlightenment level is the same as the universe, you're really there. You're here. Most people are kind of here right now on their journey, and sometimes it takes them a few kind of,
Hmm.
uh, some tries, I guess. Is that a good way to explain that, or?
Yeah, yeah, it's okay. The way I just want to say here is like, uh, why not everybody will, everybody has different path, different. The way I see it is like every soul comes to the earth to get experience.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different experience, and it's not everybody. Each soul has different experience, and if your experience is not part of this, what we're talking about, you won't get there, because it's not your time now. So to experience that. So this is how I see it. But
It's
yeah,
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say it. It's very true, because like the journey that I'm on now, I was not on the same journey in time that
yeah,
long ago. So for us, it is kind of a one thing that there's a famous saying that Bentov, when Bentov passed, when
hmm,
that a lot of people talk about in the community. It's that when Bentov got on the plane in Chicago, he saw that all the souls, nobody had souls, all their auras, there was no aura at all on them.
yeah, yeah,
And his famous words were, "Well, I've got somewhere else to go, some other place to check out."
yep,
So his journey, and it's always resonated and with the community, because it's much like you kind of say, is that his journey, what he was on, was different than what we were on. And the people
exactly.
that might be next to you, they're on their own journey,
Hmm.
and I definitely feel there's a little bit of not responsibility, it's more like a gift, that as we kind of obtain any enlightenment, anything that we can share along the way or share with our fellow people, things that are constructive, things that might help people's daily lives, not for money, not for profit, just for information. I think there's no better gift than being able to teach something that you might have picked up on life that maybe other people are struggling with.
Hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean that you know everything. It just means that when you have that gift that you can give, and it didn't cost you anything to give that gift and help someone out of there into some enlightenment,
Hmm.
that's. But like you said, it may not be their time in the journey. Maybe they'll listen to it, and maybe they'll think about it years later. Maybe they'll never think about it. Maybe their
Hmm.
journey isn't about that. But
Yeah, no, no, no. It's fine. Everybody has their own path. That's not a thing. What I liked about really the way that those graphs he explained, right? So some people are here in the consciousness, right? So level. So here's like their consciousness is the least developed, and then majority is here, majority of the people, and the most let's say consciously awareness are on the right, right? The
mm-hmm.
funny things he said is like he has the interviewer is like, so where do you think we can find those guys? And he's like, oh, maybe universities, professors, inventors. It's like, no, they're how do you say, lunatic in the what
Insane asylums.
yeah, it says like, and this is where he says like, yeah, because unless they adapt to this world, because their frequency is so much, they see so much and other things that because their frequency is on a different level that they just don't fit here, and that's why we call them crazy. And then he says like, let's take 1,000 years or 100 or 500 years later, and he says where now the most people are, or now the average is consciously aware, here's going to be the minimum 5 years, 500 years from now. And so this is going to change to there, right? So to that kind of level. And when I don't know, for my research that I'm doing now, it's like that was like a big piece that was like, okay, something clicked that for me in there. Like,
There's a
and
lot of truth to that because,
yeah, of
like I've
course
said,
it
with the
is.
tools, with
Yeah,
everything that we develop, it is, as small as that graph is, we are learning, we are
yeah,
becoming more enlightened. We know
yeah,
so much more today, that there is a consciousness,
yeah.
that it's out of the body. There are some true facts that we can actually say about it,
Mhm.
to the most extent that we can
Mhm.
explain, you know.
Yeah, no, no, it is, and also, it's a natural process, the way I see it, of frequency of the earth, of the universe, where this awareness ascension is now more possible because it's time for that. Even in that kind of way of, I don't know if you are you familiar with work of Dolores Cannon?
I don't think
No,
so.
no. Okay, this is something that would give you. I think I would recommend you to check it out,
Okay.
and you're gonna see the this part of ascension, the way she explains,
Okay.
and you can connect with the science background, and
Okay.
it's gonna make a lot of sense because what you're saying to me, it's like it's going that. Dolores Cannon things that are coming now that she was talking about it that I read 10, 15 years ago and was like, and we are just explaining now in from that point of view.
I will. This is the only thing I want to say on Ascension, and
Yeah,
I don't even know Dolores,
yeah,
but when I hear Ascension, in some ways, she's actually 100% right. The natural evolution of consciousness and just us as people,
yeah,
it's just constantly kind of goes up as
of
a
course.
whole, as a group.
Yeah,
Now, there's people that will always be in the bottom, and there's always going to be people at the top that are, that come out and just see the world. Oh, what do you mean you can't see consciousness? You guys don't know? There's always going to be those super smart people. And those people, like Bentov was saying, unfortunately, we think they're crazy a lot of times
yeah,
because how they see things and what they see is different from our world. And if they can't actually, explain it or be in our world too, they do get considered, and just like many years ago, we found out that a lot of people that were in those mental institutions were sick of something. They had a health concern. They may have had a disease that caused them to go crazy, and they didn't need holes drilled in their head or leeches. They needed real medical help, but there was nothing wrong with them. And I think the same thing is true that's going to be seen today.
yeah.
Is that in the future we're going to see they were right about what they were seeing. They had some medical conditions, but they were right. Not
Mhm.
everybody's going to be like this. There are people that have, and I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room. And the big one is people with like brain damage, people that may have seen something, maybe they near death experience, and but I never discredit any of them because as a scientist, as a person, I have to be open to everything, even to question my own math, even to question that. Because the minute I don't do that, I'm no longer really a scientist. I'm not really I'm not a human. And in nature, we're humans. So
I think you couldn't say better. Where can people find you? I'm gonna put later on everything
I
on this,
have a
but
YouTube channel that I primarily
okay,
started probably less than a year ago, and
okay,
it's called Pyle Advanced Research, and that's Pyle Advanced Research, and that's really where I do my consciousness research. I do my meditations. I talk about Steinberg. I talk about Grinberg. I talk about Carl Jung. There's a lot of consciousness researchers that I do some research on, and then I make a small video, and then I try to show it to some people just to open their mind about these people. Because a lot of people, even though they've been through college, like my wife, she's been through college, she doesn't know any of these names. She's never even heard of these people. And she's been to college, she graduated. There's a lot of smart people out there that have never heard of these people and
Mhm.
their experience. So I try to introduce the world to some of them. I'm hoping maybe one of them, like, hey, I didn't really like Carl Jung, but I like Steinberg. I don't, find
Yeah,
something that sparks your interest and creates your own journey of consciousness, how it did kind of me. And like I said, I also have on my channel where I do my Itzhak Bentov meditation. I've got on there where I do a couple of the basic steps, some more advanced stuff. I still try to post a video every once in a while, but I'm really working on my ebooks. Those are available on Amazon and Kindle. If you just type in Bentov meditation, I think I'm the only one that's going to have that on there. I basically,
Yeah.
nobody else has anything to do with that.
No,
I've
no,
got
no.
three of those books out there right now, just depending on people's level. So if you're just beginning out, I've got a book called Meditation is the New Hype. It has the Bentov 5-step, but it's really easy for like everybody to get into. And then my first book, the one that you read, that is really the middle ground. It's got some beginner stuff, but it also talks about more advanced stuff, you know. And I'm hoping that, you know, if and then the third one I just put out is for a lot of people that said, I've seen this, I've read this
Hmm.
before, I want something more advanced. What can I have some the advanced, it's called an advanced look, Bentov secrets, because it was the last of what I had on the guy. I probably will never make another book on Bentov ever again, because that was all the research. I didn't want to fill it with a bunch of just filler, some fluff. I wanted, these are short books too. I wanted it to be, here's what's up, this is what it says, here's the meditation, blah blah blah. So they're easy, quick reads, and like I said, I'm really enjoying the writing aspect. I'm going to continue the meditation. My next video that's going to come out is, I think it's my 100, I don't know, 100 hours of Bentov meditation. It's basically, I try to do a threshold, like when I hit this milestone, create a video, just talk about where I'm at. A lot of people want to know, are you still doing it? And yes, I'm still doing it. I still think it's giving me, I don't drink any caffeine. I drink water in the morning. I used to drink coffee all the time. I used to smoke cigarettes all the time. I don't need any of that anymore. And I don't miss it anymore.
Nice.
That's the other thing, is when you start doing stuff like this, it just takes your time up. Like, I'm not going out to smoke a cigarette. I want to, I've got other things to do. And I was able, it just bettered my life. I saved money. All the money that I saved, it just, the hill, it just went like this. It made it a lot easier, and I'm a lot closer up the hill than I was. And this is what I say. This is the last parting thing that I want to say, and then I'll let you talk. Is that what I always try to tell people too? Is that if I can just reach out and get one person to try meditation and try to change their lives, even if I only reach one person a month or one person a year, I think it's all the worth it in the world, because
True.
one person doesn't seem like it's much until you are that one person, and
It's true.
that's what happened to me. So I'm just kind of continuing it.
It's true. It's true. Will, thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you for
So,
having me. I appreciate the time.
and hopefully we'll do it again at some
Yeah, if you
point.
want to do another one in the future, you let me know anytime.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. Bye.
Hey, thank you. Have a great day.